Bookcase and Coffee presents Buzzing About Romance, a quick shot of romance.
Hey everyone, welcome to Buzzing About Romance, a quick shot of romance. I am Becky, and joining me for this episode is podcast contributor Rachel. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, Becky.
So today we are going to review Only Mine by Laura Pavlov, and this is book 5 in her Honey Mountain series. Rachel has been trying to get me to read this series, to read this author for the last year.
Accurate.
You're
Yes.
always like, let's do this one. And I'm like, But it's like my little Christmas present to you.
Thank you. I
You're-
love it.
You're welcome. So I will say this is book 5. This is the only book I've read in this series, and I read it as a standalone. But you've read this whole series cover to cover from 1 to 5.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And we'll get into it. But so the full title of this book is Only Mine, a Small Town Enemies to Lovers Romance. Before we get into the synopsis, and I'm going to get this out of the way, this isn't really a small town romance.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, she's from a small town, but the majority of this book
Yes.
takes place in San Francisco and it really has big city vibes. So we get
Yep.
like maybe a half a dozen pages in the small town. So that's my only complaint, and I'll let it go now. Like Elsa, I'll let it go. Okay, read us the synopsis from Goodreads.
Okay. It's loading.
It's loading.
Yeah, my iPad has been loving me lately.
It's always nice when technology works against you.
Okay. Wolf Wayburn is the devil in an Armani suit. Most women would drop to their knees at just the sight of him. Lucky for me, I'm not most women. The first time we met, he cut me off at a gas station, so I flashed him the bird and mocked his family jewels. The second time we met, he tried to get me fired. He took his shot and he missed, at least for now. Wolf Wayburn was an ex-Navy SEAL with an attitude, but it would take a lot more than the big bad wolf to scare me off. I had 90 days to win the man over, to convince him that I was the right person for the job. But spending endless amounts of time with him proved more challenging than I'd expected. He was stubborn and broody and charming and sexy, all at the same time. I despised him as much as I craved him. We taunted and teased and terrorized one another for weeks. The first time he dropped to his knees, it was to search me for a weapon. The second time, it was an altogether different story. I never planned to fall for the enemy because I knew it was easier to hate Wolf Wayburn than to love him. This is book 5 in the Honey Mountain series. Each one can be read as a complete standalone, and HEA is guaranteed.
So, and I did. It does absolutely stand on its own. I felt like I knew these two characters. I knew what they were about. The connection is tangible. So I absolutely believe that this can be read as a standalone.
Yes, it definitely can be read as a standalone. And Wolf, so obviously, like Honey Mountain, it's 5 sisters, and this is the 5th and final book. Dylan is the last sister. We do not meet Wolf at all until this book. We hear about Wolf in book 4 at the end as the hockey team's owner's son, but we do not meet him. And I definitely think that helps this be a total standalone. For sure.
And it does. And it was interesting to me too, because, you know, obviously this is an author that writes in series, and I knew that this was going to be a jumping off point for another series. I guessed she was going to write the San Francisco Sharks, the hockey team, because a big part of this story was Wolf and Dylan going out and meeting with agents and kind of contract talks, and the team's going to have a rebuilding year. And I really thought that this was going into a hockey romance. And you're like, nope, it's the cousins. And I'm like, what cousins?
Yeah. Well, Hugh plays he's in a few scenes.
Right. Towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that happened like after you read that after we talked.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense, but I'm also like, I didn't even like think about the hockey thing, but I think it's because I knew that it was going to be the cousins. But now I'm like, hopefully Laura writes the hockey team, like a hockey series too. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, she sets it up because there's some really dynamic characters that we kind of are talked about and introduced to. And Hawk, who is Dylan's brother-in-law, is going to retire and move into a coaching position. So there is potential there.
Yes.
But if you only read the first 50%, you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is totally going to be a hockey series next. Because that's what it felt like. Okay, release date on this is December 15th of 2022. Enemies to lovers, opposites attract. He is a veteran. He's a former Navy SEAL. Co-workers, close proximity. They have a great meet cute.
They do.
She is so feisty. Like, out of the box, like, out the door of her car, like, screaming and yelling at people because she got cut off at the gas station. I'm like,
I loved it.
It was really great. And you just knew, like, as you're reading that scene, you just knew that he was going to be the son. Like, you just knew.
Yes, for sure. Even if you didn't read the like blurb,
Yeah.
you know that this guy is it. Like, you know.
This is a great family series, and the series name is Honey Mountain, and absolutely a series of standalones, but they are interconnected. We do meet Dylan, her sisters, and we do get some time in the small town of Honey Mountain. We just don't, if you read this as a standalone, you don't necessarily get the picture of the town's personality and their quirkiness. You know, it's a ski resort, and somehow the fire department's going to plays a key part in some of the other stories.
Well, her dad is the like captain of the fire station, and two of her brother-in-laws are firefighters.
So yeah, you get pieces, but not a ton of pieces in this story.
Mm-hmm.
Put out percentage was 41%, and once it starts popping, it pops, and I'm like, whoa, holy sexiness. Like, okay. We aren't going for slow burn here, sister.
No, and it was so funny. She had mentioned that she likes writing the banter of like enemies or rivals to lovers, but she usually like gets them together too quick. And she did it longer this time. So which makes me laugh because it's 41%. But
Yeah.
it is longer than some of her other enemies to lovers. Like, they're definitely like not fans of each other, but once they get together, they are getting together.
Well, they're so quirky because even as they're like in the midst of this very intense love affair, they're like, I hate you. I hate you. And you and I kind of talked about this a little bit, but I struggle with enemies to lovers. Anytime something says enemies to lovers, I'm just like, I really have a hard time with the hate, fuck, oh my gosh, I love you. Like, sometimes it's just so overdone. And I tend to lean, if I'm going to have that kind of relationship, I tend to lean more towards an adversary where there isn't this hatred, this all-encompassing, like, we're at war feel. And I said, I felt like this story was a little bit more adversaries. And then you said, no, I think it's enemies because he does look at her as the enemy.
Yes, he definitely at the beginning, like, he's like, this girl is not the answer. She cannot be it. Like, I am not about this. She cannot have this job. Like, I'm protecting my family business from this woman.
Well, and not just the family business, but he thinks that, like, she has bamboozled his dad, the attorney for the team, his sister, his secretary, like, everybody. Like, he has decided that she is some kind of witch that has hypnotized them all.
And she was definitely obviously very mad at him about the gas station and everything else. but I do think she saw him as like, sure, the enemy because he's actually trying to prevent her from getting a job, but definitely an adversary because he is her obstacle.
Right.
Like she has to like conquer him in order to get her dream job.
Well, like seriously, I'm pretty sure she would have buried him in a snow pile and walked away and been like, dude, I'm done with you. I win.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Um, so this book, now, so this was my first Laura Pavlov. There was so much amazing banter in this book, which I love. I love banter. I love a really feisty heroine that is quick with her quips and, you know, snazzy comebacks. And these two were amazing.
Yes, they were. Like so much banter. Like every time they were together, you're like, what's gonna come next?
I mean, they were so great. Like there is, and it's early on in the book, they're traveling together to, you know, talk to agents and kind of do some scouting and to see where players might land in free agency. And Wolf is being flirted with a hostess at the restaurant at the hotel. And Dylan goes out of her way to tell the hostess, you don't want him. He has a small penis. And it's like
A micro penis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and the 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 hostess was like, "Oh, okay." But then on the flip side, he gets her back with the bartender at the next stop or a couple stops later, where he tells the bartender she has two vaginas. And he's like, "Okay, I can deal with that. I can work with this." And I'm like, "Okay." First of all, what bartender? Like, that guy is an idiot. It's like, why did
Yes.
you believe that?
Right, like that's oh, that's funny. I was cracking up. I was like that I figured they would go the route of being like, oh, they have an STD or something like that.
Right,
And they
right.
both just like took it up a notch that made it so much funnier.
So funny because honestly, if you look at the picture of these two characters, he is the son of a billionaire. He is super grumpy. Like, honestly, this was Grumpy Sunshine more than Enemies to Lovers, in my opinion. Like, he was grouchy. He was trying to settle into
So grouchy.
civilian life. He didn't like the hand that was being handed to him. He wanted more control, and he's used to being in a leadership role. He's used to the control, and he wasn't having that. And he's used to being the head of soldiers, and so people kind of just fall in line. Like, people under him fall into line. And Dylan was not falling into anyone's line.
No, she was not. She was not.
And
he did not know what to do with her.
He didn't. And she was so smart and so intense. And the best I can say is she is somebody who was living out loud. Like, there was no corners for her. She spoke her mind. She put herself out there. And that is not how Wolf lives.
No, definitely not. He's super structured, black and white. Like the scene with the first agent, like we don't want to spoil anything, but how she like gets him to the meeting, Wolf would have never.
No, he would have just accepted that the guy wasn't showing up. And Dylan was like, nope, not good enough for me. We're going to take these steps and this is going to happen. And I think that that's kind of how she looks at life a little bit too, is we're going to take these steps and this is how life's going to happen. But in as much as she has this amazing group of 4 sisters that are very close and an amazing dad, she has suffered loss. She lost her mom at a young age. So that is a content warning. There is the loss of a parent mentioned. And I think that losing the parent at the age that she did, she kind of, instead of wallowing in grief, said, I'm going to live every day to the fullest.
Yep, I think that's completely true.
And she did, and it was so great to watch these two on page. Okay, so there's so many great characters in this book, and that's the other thing I want to give a compliment to the author. I complain a lot of times, especially when I read a book as a standalone, that pages will be crowded with giving me too much information about past characters or future characters. This author does not do that. It is a very good balance. This was absolutely Dylan and Wolf's story, and everyone else was a supporting character.
Yep, I completely agree. She didn't throw in too many cameos of the 4 previous couples, which is easy to do, especially in the last book of a series. We see that a lot, where the last book is just way longer than the others because it throws everything possible in. So I liked that the focus was definitely Dylan and Wolf. And while she might have gone back home for Halloween or had dinner with her sister and a hawk, like, those were just minor scenes and not integral parts of the story.
It wasn't. And the stories was not dependent on those people pushing this story or this couple together. And instead, this couple really carries the story themselves. They're so dynamic. I started this book yesterday later than I should have, and I did not go to bed till I was done. Like, I had to read this.
Yep.
And even some of the new characters that are introduced, because we have the Wayburn family who the dad owns the hockey team. Wolf has a brother and a sister, and the sister has a boyfriend, and there's some history for Wolf with a ex and a friend. All of that, those characters were all such great characters and so likable.
I know. I'm like, so are his brother and sister gonna get a book? Like, all these people need books.
So I think Sabine, the sister, is going to end up maybe in the next book of the first series with Hugh.
So if you read at the end of the book, his heroine is not her.
Oh,
I definitely thought too. His story is going to be a brother's best friend, or like best friend's sister.
Best friend's
sister. And it's good. And it's funny because, like, Laura had mentioned that she already had Hugh's heroine. Like, it's a done deal. And everyone, like, had that same vibe. I'm like, well, obviously, like, she needs a book now.
Yeah, because now I'm a little sad. I do have to talk about one of the best scenes in this book. That I was reading this late at night. It's like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. My husband, Mike's asleep. And I am reading this book. And I am laughing. And I am shaking the bed. And I am so afraid that I'm going to wake him up. There is this scene at about 42%, or a little later, maybe it was 46, 47%. They go to dinner at his family's house. She's invited. The sisters invited her to dinner. She goes with Wolf. And holy crap, the cast of characters in this book and in this dinner. He has a cousin who's quirky, who sings everything.
I had tears streaming down my face from trying to hold my laughter in, because I was like, this is so outrageous, but like believable, like in a family of like ultra rich people, right, that you just have this like super quirky cousin. I was like, this is amazing.
So amazing. And there's a part where somebody says something, asks Dylan if she and Wolf are dating, are boyfriend and girlfriend, and the answer is like, no, I'm very single. And he's like, yeah, she's single, we are not together. And the cousin starts singing All the Single Ladies, and Dylan joins in, and then the mom, and then the sister, and it was just like, oh my God, it was so funny. So very funny.
It was so funny. And I thought it showed a lot about his family, that they like embrace the quirky cousin and they're not like embarrassed by her
No.
or like trying to tone her down or anything like that. They're not like this evil rich family.
No, there was no judgment in this family. And all of the people felt very real in this book. Like, these were just humans, and they acted like humans, and they had real human feelings. Nothing felt extreme. It was just such a really good, quick read that, and I am intrigued by some of the sisters. I'm gonna, probably have to go back and read some of the sisters now in my own chaotic fashion that.
Yeah. And I do think all of them stand alone well, in the sense that obviously if you read a series in order where this goes like chronologically, you're gonna like experience it differently than reading it out of order, right? Because I know all of the sister stories and I know all of that. But Laura does a great job of making sure the couple that the book is about is the focus. And like there's not a lot of noise from everyone else other than like the family group chats and like maybe seeing them in town, that kind of stuff. But it's by no means like too crowded.
It wasn't. It was exceptionally well done. I really enjoyed it. I am intrigued by her writing style. I absolutely will pick up the Cousins books, and I am going to go back and read the previous books in this series. It's in Kindle Unlimited, which makes it even that much more accessible because, you're not, it's a checkout on Kindle Unlimited. And I really do, I really do think this was very well done, and I will absolutely recommend it.
And the audio is not out for this one yet, but she is releasing audios for some of the series is already out. And then I think this one comes out in like February. And then I saw she said that the next series, it's going to have a simultaneous audio release for those audiobook listeners, which will be really nice.
That is very nice when that can happen. Okay. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for recommending Only Mine by Laura Pavlov. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for joining me for this quick shot of romance.
Thanks for reading it, and thanks for having me.
Until next time, everyone, happy reading.
Find us on Instagram at buzzingaboutromance or on Twitter at buzzingromance. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like to support us directly, join the Bookcase and Coffee Patreon and receive exclusive content only available to Patreon members. Check out bookcaseandcoffee.com for our on-the-shelf show notes.